eventually. Welcome back, everybody, to ACES53 with Ed Parco and myself. And as you know, on Thursdays, it's Joker Day. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Brian Galke. Yeah. And on Thursdays, Tuesdays, it's just Ed and I kind of talking on various subjects. But on Thursdays, we have what we call Joker Days. So Joker is who is a special guest with a talent or skill that can help you in life. And since we've been talking all through 2024, now even going into 2025, how important branding is, today's special guest is Jimmy Hayes Nelson. So,
hey, question for you. Did you go live on Instagram?
Oh, I did not. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, someone has to.
I know. I have to be supervised at all times.
And Jimmy, you wonder why I have to keep track of everything he does on here.
No, see, you should be just running the show. You know, everybody stays in their lane a bit. You know, we obviously all have our own skill sets, and some of us lack in others.
Yes, and I lack in a lot when it comes to this. That's where Ed's good at setting up like the titles, the subject. I go in every once in a while and create them, but he's the master on that side of things.
I'm not. I just use my assistant.
Yes,
Mr. Chat GPT.
Yes, and
is that everybody's assistant now?
Well, if you know how to ask it properly, because you know, garbage in, garbage out. And if you don't know what you're asking it, like one of the things I was telling some I help vets now. I don't help them, but I get them to where they need to go to get their disability. And I created a GPT to where you drop your DD-214 in there, what your elements are, and it'll help write what you need to write for each one of those areas. And so you can do things like that. And I gave it to a vet yesterday, go use this just to help you. Because everybody's like, I don't know what to say. Well, whatever it creates, and then go in there and adjust it to exactly what it is. And then after that, it'll do all of them exactly how it should be.
Dude, writing prompts for ChatGPT is like its own business now. In fact, one of my business partners, when we're putting together like our speaking clients, we do a couple things, and he's become a master at like creating these bots. And in fact, we call her Peggy. So he went in and like trained her because of a character in Mad Men, and it was like she knows everything about our business, and he continues to always upgrade it. But that's like its own world. I was like, AI is not going to replace jobs. People that know how to use AI will have their jobs. I mean, that don't will have their jobs replaced. But that's like its own world now. Is how do you train that piece of AI to do exactly what you want it to do as an assistant?
I went to a business meeting yesterday here in Dallas, up in McKinney, and that's what one of the hosts said. He said the future is not only you, but you have to have an AI version of yourself that people can have access to all the time, because that's going to be the expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that we help with in those prompts is also helping people get on things like this. Like once you know your ideal audience and what problem you solve, we've started writing prompts for people to help them find stages, podcasts, etc., with the right prompts to then know how to reach out and help write those reach out emails and the things that you're going to like present yourself to be on shows like this for people as well.
Yeah.
I created some for websites, and then all the emails and all the other stuff you need done. So like if you're trying to find your perfect client, how do you make sure that direct response content's on your website? And then from that, what are the emails you need to do for follow-up and other stuff after the fact? And I don't know if you know this, but you can daisy chain them together, Jimmy.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So if you have one that starts with, and then it's the @ and then other GPTs you've created.
Oh. And I don't know that. I bet my business partner does, but I didn't know you could do that.
A lot of people didn't know. I didn't know you could daisy chain until I watched somebody's video, and you're like, oh, by the way, you can daisy chain these. So I'm like, what? And did you know you can have ChatGPT write the prompt for you to create the prompt for you?
No, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's because when people go, how are you writing the prompts? I go, well, I create what I'm trying to do, and then I have it help me write the prompt for what I'm doing.
Smart.
Because my daily show, I used to spend 2 hours getting together all the content and putting it inside a StreamYard to go ahead, and so I'm ready to go. Now I just copy paste, and I don't even copy the articles. I just copy the links of the articles in there, and it writes my show for me. So all I have to do is read it now instead of going. Yeah. So I'm done in less than 2 minutes, what used to take me 2 hours.
Yeah. The other thing we'll do sometimes is we'll take somebody's keynote speech once they've done it, and then just get the transcript. Like after you've written it, they've gone on stage, and we'll come back and just make all their social media prompts for them. They're like, here's my speaking style. Come up with, 13 posts for LinkedIn, or come up with 13 ideas for my next reels or whatever. And it's like, oh, because you talked about XYZ, because I feel like half creation is, you guys know this, it's showing up and being consistent. And then you're like, what am I going to talk about today? Brian, like, how many times can I talk about somebody's eyebrows? You're like, well, here's a different way to present what it is that you do, And so for me, and I learned that from David Meltzer, kind of always said that. He said, it takes the same energy to go from 0 to 1 as it does from 1 to 100. And he's like, the AI's biggest tool is helping you get from 0 to 1. So you're not just looking at a blank page or just staring at a camera and like, shit, what do I talk about today? It like at least will do a bit of a brainstorm for you.
Well, so pause for 1 second. We jumped in because you and I know Jimmy, but we didn't get to introduce who Jimmy is and why he's
Jimmy's been on here so many times.
No, he always backs out. No, we have him scheduled. And then he's like, oh, I'm so
We've
busy.
had him 2 other times that he actually showed up. And
I know it's for new people.
2 other times.
So
this is time number 3, right?
But for people who don't know who Jimmy is, so Jimmy is locally based here in Dallas as well. He's an MC, he's a speaker, but what he also has, and he's a judge. He can talk about that. Not that you do judge people. You know,
we all judge people.
Right. But he has something known as Story WellCrafted, and he goes and helps entrepreneurs, business owners, people figure out and draw out the message that they want to share. Because we all know what we want to do, but we don't necessarily know how to communicate that with other people. And so that's where people go to Jimmy. They go to his workshops. He comes into their corporations and helps them really kind of dive in deep and understand, how do I share the message that I want to the ideal audience? Is that a fair way to say it, Jimmy?
That's a great way to say it. Well done.
And then with that, then you got to take, so this is what we've been talking about for a long time now, is who is that perfect client? Right. Who is your, other people call avatar, I guess that's what you can use it, or us old people just call it, who is your perfect client? And you need to find that person, because everybody's afraid to niche down because they're afraid they're going to leave somebody out. What's happening is that person's going to hear what you're talking about and come to you, and you're going to draw those people to you, and you're going to repel the people you do not want to work with. And because you can't help them. But we're not saying you can't help the people who come to you that's outside of the channel that you're trying to do that. You can still work with those people.
Right.
Oh yeah. I tell people all the time that if you'll niche down, people outside that niche will find you, but you'll dominate inside that niche. And what people don't realize is, no matter how like random the niche is, there's still thousands, if not millions of people inside a niche. I remember I used to work with this couple that had a health and fitness coaching online business, but they lived in like rural Louisiana, and they were very redneck. Like their Instagram stuff was like them and the dogs out back, like literally throwing up and like shooting cabbages and shit with like their shotguns and stuff. And they were like, they said, they're like, do you think we're being too nichey about this? And it was about that time. Do you remember Duck Dynasty? Is that still around? And I kind of used that as an example. I was like, look, I said, majority of the Americans that watch Duck Dynasty aren't bearded and camo and, own a duck call business. I said, but everybody's fascinated with them because they are like 1,000% them. And it's kind of the same thing in business. If you're like, okay, I'm going to work with, I have a friend of mine who also judges with me. We can get to that in a second, Brian, but she has a business called Mother Trucker Yoga, and she helps overnight truckers like with their health and fitness and exercises they can do on the road and stuff like that. And for the longest time, she was just generic yoga teacher with kind of a struggling business. And the minute she niched into that, she's being asked to speak at every trucking association thing, and she built this huge following there. But then she started having pilots say, hey, I know you work with truckers, but can you help pilots? Can you help other people? That never would have happened had she not niched down in the first place.
And that way you can niche everything down. I was telling somebody else, I think yesterday, about what I did last week, which is separated out my different 3 niches to 3 different websites that I do.
Smart.
Yeah. Because in my business in the mortgage industry, you can say you niche into certain places, but if your website says I could do it for everybody, you're not niched down.
No, and that's even a step further, because what I've started doing with my content, it's like, okay, storytelling for real estate agents, because I do work in different industries, but I started in the health and fitness industry. So when I first started, it was just people with online in-home fitness businesses. And so, but then, and this is really a funny story, because the reason I started doing what I do now is my dad watched me working with clients on social media and then asked me to come talk to his real estate agents when he was a broker at Remax. So the exact same thing happened. I was just in one area until somebody else said, I know you work with fitness people. do you think your processes and your strategies would work for somebody in real estate? And that's kind of what branched that off now, and working with a bunch of different industries now.
Yeah, you just need to know who your client is and niche it down. And it doesn't mean you can't have multiple niches.
Oh, no, not at all. And I think that's smart that you have different websites for that, because the very first thing we start with any client, and we kind of have this 5C process we talk about. The very first C is clarity. And it's, who is your ideal audience and what problem do you solve? And can you describe the problem the way your client describes it? Because so many times we want to talk about the solution, right? And we don't always use our customers' language in describing the problem also. But you can't have a message, you can't have any marketing if you don't know who that person is, what's their problem, and how do they describe it, like whether having a drink with a buddy or to a loved one or someone at the end of the day, like how would they complain about whatever their problem is.
Correct.
That's the key part.
Ryan, are you over here
how
now?
would they describe it?
Are you too busy there? I'm sorry, you saw you were.
I'm answering. Somebody was asking on the Instagram, can Jimmy do the roadmap for fitness? And I was telling them that they can DM him directly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm answering questions. You calm down, Ed. I'm responding to the people.
He's a man of the people.
That's when I close down my Instagram when we go.
Oh, no, I answer questions. Just keep the engagement going.
You're better than me.
Well,
no, so what Brian was referring to, I just got done, Ed. This past week, I was judging the Great American Speak Off, season 3 for Grant Cardone. And we were talking about that everybody comes in there, like the first, so this was the semifinals, the first round, everybody gets a minute to tell a story. And it's crazy, even the kind of going off the niche or whatever, it was the people that went through knew exactly even in a minute, they knew who their audience was, they knew what the problem was. And in a minute, the people that really went through for me, they told some kind of story. They gave me a specific example, some story. They taught me something, some steps, something I could do. And then with some kind of call to action, even if the call to action was just, hey, think a different way, or do this next time you're somewhere. It wasn't necessarily a call to action to their website. But in 3 years of doing this, it's amazing how many people, and maybe, I don't know, maybe social media and reels and stuff like that have started training people to be able to say more in less amount of time. Mm-hmm. But I think this season was by far the best, where people coming in and really in 1 minute had, those 3 parts to their story. And then, this past week was semifinals, and what my room was kind of a breakout room. They got to come in, and it was a big Zoom room, and I had everybody in a chat, and I had everybody go down, and they had to pick one word that represented them or their brand or their goal, like what represented them. And then basically it was kind of like media training. I would just go through, I used ChatGPT, and I asked him like, hey, I need 20 different ways to ask people the same question. And so I had a sheet here like this and just went through and would see, and then they had 90 seconds. And again, in that same 90 seconds, what the people that were really good is, no matter what question I asked, almost like a good politician or an athlete does, they could answer, they could move the question however they wanted to, instead of getting so bogged down in the question, they're just like, oh, that's a great question, and would still go back to their messaging. And I was like, and those are the people that went through to the finals as well. So it was pretty interesting.
Very cool. So with you working with people from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of industries, like you and I were talking the other night about a recent client, since I don't know if you're allowed to talk about him, but since everybody's watching Landman right now,
by the way, it's last episode this weekend.
Is it really? Okay. I'm all caught up on it, so I'm waiting to catch up on that and some of the other shows I started watching.
With Jerry Jones's acting debut.
Yeah. Well, people are hoping he goes that route and not owning the Cowboys anymore, so that's a whole other subject.
Jerry Jones.
Right. Yeah. I digress. Anyway, go ahead. I know your second question.
Work with your family. Work with your family.
You work with all kinds of industries. What is it that you see as the most common mistake that you help people with?
Man, I think it really is being able to educate your audience. I feel like there's always 2 types of problems. There's problems people know that they have, and there's problems people don't know they have. And so what you're referring to, one of my newer clients, they help people invest in mineral rights in West Texas, which I guess I knew was a thing, but I really didn't think about it as an investment piece. And 2 things, it can just be an investment, but it's also if somebody had a piece of property, and to go down into the weeds here, if somebody had a piece of property, they're going to sell that and buy another piece of property and don't want to get taxed on the gains, they can offshoot that by buying these mineral rights. And a thing that I didn't even know, and so when I was first meeting them, I said, is half of your marketing educating your audience that this even exists? And the guy was like, oh, it's like 80%,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I said, I know this, I've had the same conversation with Brad Summerall's people who in the multifamily real estate. And I was like, your competition isn't other people getting people to invest in mineral rights, or your competition is not getting other people to invest in multifamily. I said, your competition is anywhere else they could put their money. Right. And so what you need to talk about is their pain point of they don't know what to do with their money, or they've been disappointed in investments in the past, or they got burned. And you don't necessarily lead with your solution. And I think that's probably one of the number one things that I see is people lead with their solution, not what you really got to get down to, like, okay, what's the problem? And the problem in both those situations are people don't know where to put their money, or they've had investments in the past that burned them or they were dissatisfied with. And so if you lead with being dissatisfied with your investment portfolio, then you can lead them to your solution. And I think that's a big problem a lot of people make.
So you have to learn to point out the pain. Is that kind of a fair way to do it?
Absolutely. Like, where have they been disappointed? Specifically, it's like they've either been scared to invest at all, so they just have their money under their mattress, and this goes for any business, or they've done something before and it didn't work, or they were burned. That fitness program didn't work, that diet didn't work, that whatever. I'm never working with a real estate agent again. I'm going to for sale by owner this thing because I had some real estate agent that, didn't show up. So it absolutely is being able to just, instead of like hoping they don't bring up the objection, I always tell people, just shine a big light on it. Just call it out and say, look, you probably feel this way. Because then those people are like, oh my God, he's already in my head. He gets me. And that is like immediate rapport with your audience.
And people used to think that I only hire somebody to help me craft my message when I'm giving a presentation on stage. Yeah. But that's not the reality. This day and age, it's who's the better marketer is who gets a lot of the business. And that's when Ed and I were talking about this the other day of, you used to be who was the best ClickFunnels marketer. So it was whoever could create the best funnels. And what we see with a lot of things it's the people who have the best marketing that sell more. So you can have the best product, the best content, the best anything. But if you don't know how to share information about that product, that service, that thing, you're just going to get out marketed. You can be the best in your industry, but it's who's getting out there and who has the better message that's the most important.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. Better marketing beats a better product, always. It's why it's just such a cheap example, but like that's why McDonald's always sold a lot of hamburgers. It's not that they were the best meal; they were the best marketers, right? You know, even stuff like, as much as I'm staring at a gajillion Apple products here that I'm looking at, there's a lot of people that argue they don't necessarily make the best products, but they're the best marketers at things. And that's why, most people have some Apple product over an Android or something else.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean by people don't know to come to somebody like yourself because they just think, oh, well, I hired a company to put together my marketing, my website. They put my brochures together, but they need direction from you. Ed, you used a company recently where it was VAs that you used, but you had to explain to them what you really wanted, right? So
I think you have to do that with any VA you work with. You have to, or anybody you work with, employee or whatever, you have to explain what you want. Right. It was just a little bit more, they didn't get it. They didn't understand. There was an issue with, and I think that's why like people like Qasim, the way he's doing his companies and training his people is you're paying way more for them, but in reality you're paying less, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. I heard a great line, maybe it was today, and maybe I'd heard it before, but sometimes things just hit you later, and they were talking about selling a product, and she said, what's the problem? The price of the cost. And they were like, what's the difference? And, well, the price is what you pay today. The cost is if you don't take action, or you went with somebody else, and that kind of sounds like what you're saying, Ed, like you're going to pay more now, but the cost over time is worth that, because if you have people that get what it is, like the essence of your business, and can share your message on your behalf better, that price up front is it's going to, the cost long-term is going to be worth it than, hey, I save some money up front, but nobody knows what I do, or I just blend in, I'm generic, whatever, and you don't stand out in your industry.
It's the marketing. I grew up in, sales is number one, but sales is important, but you have to have the marketing material. You have to understand what's your message before you can figure out how to even sell something. And that's where
bodies, you can't sell anybody anything if there's not people in the door asking about it. Yeah, the marketing piece it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they do go hand in hand. If you have a lot of people and you can't close, that doesn't help. But I would rather have that problem than no people. I could be the best closed in the world, but if I have people to close, then business isn't going to go forward.
Well, Ed and I talk about it all the time. Like cold calling it's a lost art, but that's what made a lot of businesses successful is cold calling, looking at people, in the yellow pages. And before you had all the marketing, now you have the ability to pop up in front of people and then they can dig into you. And if you don't have that marketing and that message out after the fact, you're screwed. Right. And that's the big, big difference. It used to be the only advertising you could do was magazines, billboards, yellow pages, radio and television. And now you can advertise on everything. Like I learned yesterday, Amazon, if you go to Twitch, you can do 60-second commercials on Twitch feeds, and now you can advertise on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. And then the more you pop up, again, people are going to be interested if you have your message and your marketing right. Then you can get the salesperson on the phone and do a discovery call or whatever it is. But you have to have that message and that marketing down.
Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. It's like Audible now, right? So you get it free through your Prime, but they have commercials on it now.
Yeah.
Which is the worst. I don't want to have commercials. That's the reason I chose to read a book. I don't want the damn commercials on it.
Right.
Yeah. And even now, because with everything that we have, it's you can do all those things and run those ads. But now, with Brian, looking at your stuff and how many views and things you get, that's free marketing, right? Like you have the opportunity that if you find a niche or something goes viral or whatever, and that's why I tell people, like, hopefully your messaging and wherever your social media is pretty consistent. Because let's say you get lucky and that one thing pops and then people go dive in and say, okay, what's this guy about the rest of the way? Hopefully, and I look at it this way, and Brian and I were having this conversation, is I've started just treating my social media as a reference page. So if I meet somebody out at, while I'm out or having a drink or something, I'm like, oh, so what do you do? Whatever. I'm not always so worried about what's the reach getting on my Instagram or YouTube or something. I just use it as a reference library. If we bring up some topic, I'm like, oh yeah, I teach about that. And I'll just send them the link or, hey, I got that video on my Instagram. And it's kind of my library of what I do or my strategies.
It's smart because if you give somebody a business card, the odds that they're going to use it, slim to none. But people are already on social media. I mean, if they go and follow you there, then you have that opportunity to pop back up in their feed, and it's non-invasive, right? It's like, oh, hey, if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can. It's that non-needy approach.
Because I literally, like, these are all business cards that are sitting here in this drawer that I probably haven't followed up with most of these people. But if I follow them on Instagram, even if I don't interact with them initially, they're going to pop back up in my feed. I'm like, oh, right, I need to follow up with that person. Oh, right. And it's easier to slide into somebody's DMs or go comment on their stuff, right? It's like, oh, now I get what you do, or give them a little engagement too. And that's better than just making a cold call. You can always get on the phone later, but that gives you an opportunity to get to know your clients a little more too.
Yeah. But you also have to, one thing that for most people is don't do your stuff to go viral. Do your message to the person that you're supposed to talk to. Because the ones, and this is just like me, Brian, the stuff of ours that went viral is because we had haters.
Right.
And if you're trying to talk to the person that you're trying to talk to with your message to, you're not going to have those haters talk to you. It's different than what Brian was doing and what I did and how we went viral and how we got more people. But that doesn't mean those are the people who are going to actually buy our stuff or actually want to do anything with us. You need
because it goes back to your ideal client.
Yeah, you have to. You're perfect. You need to write your message that you're trying to do on everything you do to who you're supposed to be talking to.
Right, and then if you happen to go viral, great. But if you're chasing the variety, something to go viral. A buddy of mine, Brock Johnson, he helps people grow their Instagram accounts, and he started doing that right out of college. He was playing college football, and he went viral early on with it was like stupid dance and silly videos and stuff that he was doing with his college football team. And he finally just started all over. He's like, yeah, I had things that blew up and went viral, but exactly what you were saying, that he's like, they weren't my audience. These people were going to buy from me. It was just a bunch of people that came through, and he had a couple million views, but it didn't move the needle for his business at all. So he started over. And so he's like, okay, if I'm going to do some of this stuff, I want to make sure, even if it's a silly reel, it still has something to do with my message and my business. So that way, if and when it goes viral, you're still attracting your audience.
Correct.
So Ed, I have an update, and I'm going to do a post about this later on, but this one particular post, I decided I'm going to hate on the haters. So I wasn't just arguing with him. I was going back and attacking him like, oh, look at you with your private profile and 0 posts. And what's interesting is the amount of people that instead of it going viral in a good way, people left. So I lost probably 1,000 followers by talking directly trash. So instead of just rebutting rebutting what they were saying, when I would actually dig in their profiles, I'm like, oh, look at you with no posts. Oh, I imagine you're a troll. You're looking for significance on my page? That's kind of sad. I would lose people. So I've learned.
Well, I never said to do that, Brian.
No, I wanted to test it. I took one.
I could have told you already.
Yeah.
You were positive and people were positive. And so that's why they were protecting you.
Yes.
If you're going to be the aggressor, they're not going to protect you.
Oh, I know. And so I wanted to see. It just took one post where I thought, I'm just going to hate on the haters. And it does not work well.
No, it does not.
Now, if your audience will fight for you, that's the best, because then you get like the interaction and you just kind of get to sit back. Now, I will say this. Sometimes, it's like if you have an email list and you're like, well, I have an email list of 10,000, but only, 2,000 say they open or interact and stuff. Sometimes trimming the fat off that thing isn't bad. So some people, I don't think losing followers is necessarily a negative if they weren't your people and they're not your tribe. Like, I'm not saying go attack your people all the time, but those people that may have left may not have been your people anyway. So I don't know that it's all negative, because sometimes these followers, it's just it's metrics for us to feel better about us,
Agreed. Vanity metrics, as Steve always says.
And back to your list. Your list is only as good as recent stuff, and it's not, it gets stale after a while. You have to get rid of those 8,000 people who are not on your list. You don't have 10,000, you have 2,000. Scale it back down and grow it again and keep them engaged. And after a while, they're going to fall off anyway because they're just done with the cycle.
Dude, and I would rather have 1,000 people that are really into me and want to buy from me and really into my stuff than 10,000 that aren't engaging, at all. Agreed. So what good is that?
Well, there's a raving fans thing.
That's what I was gonna say. What is it? 1,000 raving fans? I was getting ready to look for it because I've got it saved somewhere.
It's called Raving Fans, and it talks about it in that book.
Yeah.
If you don't know what it is, read the book. Give the author some credit.
I was looking for one.
Listen to it if you do. Here's a question: do you think listening to a book is the same as reading a book?
Yes, because I have these. I can tell you how many of these I haven't read, and I can tell you every audiobook I've ever listened to. So.
How about you,
Brian? I think the information is the information. How do you take it in? Something I've really actually been testing is getting the physical book and listening to the audio at the same time. And
that's what I was
about 1.5 speed, so I can. I'm a big note taker. I'm a big now. I am not. Can't read it on a Kindle or anything I've ever put on my phone and stuff. I won't read that book, which is crazy because you read social media all day long. But I won't go through like a digital book. But I have found specifically like the Hormozi books. I'll go through if it's something kind of dense or marketing or something like that. That way I can highlight, but I'm listening at the same time, and I find I retain better that way.
That's what Alex Hormozi recommends: is the physical book and the Audible book at the same time. It's a matter of time. Of course,
that way he gets paid twice.
Yeah, right.
Not too good for me.
I listen to podcasts or Audible when I'm running errands, and then when I can sit down, I read books. But the amount of time I sit down to read versus dead scroll or watch a TV show or something is far, far less. But books, I can remember like, oh, there's an idea. Let me go look it up on that page so I can recall more because I'm visual. Auditory, I have to do 1.5 times on Audible, or if not, everything that's shiny catches my attention. But so I have access to more knowledge through Audible or auditory books, and then I do physical books, but I love a physical book when I have the time.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring it up, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, me and my business partner that helps teach my workshops with me, we couldn't be more different because all he does is read. The only guy that I know that he will read a book while watching a football game, and he reads between plays. And I'm like, I am way too like you said, shiny object. There's no way I would comprehend anything on that book if I'm trying to read a book. It's hard for me anyway, much less trying to do it between plays of a football game. But I'm the same way. The other thing I like listening to if I'm going on a walk or a run or something and I don't need the physical book is I really, really love like autobiographies that's actually read by the author. Like right now I'm listening to Al Pacino's new autobiography. Like that one was good. The Matthew McConaughey Green Lights. I know people that read the book and I was like, you missed part of that because it's so McConaughey listening to him like talk with that. And there's certain people I think the first one I ever did that with was Lucky Man, was Michael J. Fox's book. And just like you sound like, you just feel like you're sitting with that person, having them tell you their story. But things like Hormozi's book or personal development stuff, those, for me, it's read and listen, because if you're getting real dense and stuff, my brain just wanders. Are you more a reader or an audio guy, Ed?
I listen. I can't read. I can read it, but I'll fall asleep reading the book. And every author needs to do their own voiceover, because I remember when I got Steve Sem's book and I was going to read it on the Camino de Santiago, and I met him for the first time in San Diego at a mortgage event. I was talking to him upstairs because it was some special thing for the people, the VIPs, to talk to him, and it was just listening to him and his accent, right? And so I had when I was like, this isn't working for me, I got the Audible and I was like, this is working perfect for me. I could, because you feel like you said, you feel like he's right there talking to you. It's the same with a lot of the books. That's why I think every author, especially if your own books, you need to be doing your own Audible or whatever you want to call it, where you're doing it. And I interviewed a vet this week who has Tourette's that he got when he was in the Navy. He came up with it and he couldn't get jobs, and he loves to write. And so he's doing his first Audible, and he's like, he asked all his family and everybody, should I take out my tics? And they're like, no. And I told him no, because then people think you're lying about having Tourette's.
Yeah.
And he's worked on it to where the words he says is not the slurs or everything else. It's like Shakespeare. Is, you know what I mean? He worked really hard on certain words that kind of are close to what he would say, right? And it says something totally different.
Yeah, I think there's some really talented voiceover people. I got friends that do that, that do audiobooks and stuff, but just the person that wrote those words, where the inflection goes. It's your voice, and I agree. Like the more, and I feel like that's how I, way back in the day when, before any, like early Gary Vaynerchuk, the reason I found Gary is his first book, Crush It, I listened to, and I was like, oh, I get who this guy is, right? So if you didn't know who Gary was early on and you just read that book, you didn't realize how fire he was or how New York he was or whatever. And I was more drawn to him because of listening to the audiobook. And then I bought every other one of his extra physical books, but it's like, oh, this is my dude. And I think going back to finding your tribe and your niche, that's part of that as well, right? That's part of that branding of people saying, oh, this guy isn't my guy. Cool. And allowing them to leave, or, oh, this is my guy. And they go deep with you and your products, and they're part of your tribe for years.
I had the opposite experience. I listened to Never Split the Difference on Audible, and it's a very eloquent speaker who reads the book to you. And then you meet him in real life. I was like, oh God, I felt betrayed for a minute.
Oh, really? Was it
Chris Voss?
Was it him or was it somebody else reading it?
No, it was an Audible speaker. Because remember, when Audible books first came out, they always had a professional speaker do it.
Right.
And so it was a very well-read book. And then you meet Chris, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, yeah. It threw me for a loop. I felt like I got catfished.
Oh, you're just like us. You prefer the author reading the book.
Exactly.
So you're dead. Yeah, and it's just like what you said the other day on Tuesday when I cannot watch a dubbed movie because it's just, and because I always go, that's not the voice for that person. Yeah. Even if it matters.
You'd rather have subtitles.
I'd rather just listen to, I'd rather have subtitles, not listen to a voice, because it's like, okay, that's not how it sounds. You know what I mean? That they never match the voice with the person. It's no, and you can do that easily because you do it with characters on books. You know, you could do that. You could actually match those right. But it's like the old Godzilla movies when I was really young. They'd be, oh my God, that's coming over to get us.
Yeah,
I agree, because even I think I was thinking about that, and I prefer subtitles to read it because, again, I can get a sense of what that actor. It's still them bringing something to that role, right? Whether it's, even if I don't understand the language, the inflection, how they would do it versus somebody coming in and an actor sitting in a booth trying to match up and dub certain things. I would rather read the subtitles as well.
I was telling Ed the other day, I was turned on Squid Games 2, and my ex used to have like a lot of hearing loss, so we always had captions on the TV. And so I had it on, and what bothered me even more was their words didn't match what the character's voice was, to Ed's point, but then the captions was using different words than the characters did. And I'm like, which one am I supposed to pay attention to?
Oh, right. That's funny, because what the captions were probably what the original language was.
Yes. But then when they dubbed it over, they used different words. Then even the lips didn't match, the words didn't match the captions, and I had to turn it off.
Right.
Yeah, they just destroy the shows when they do that. They should just do one or the other, not both.
Right.
I remember when I was living in New York and pursuing my acting career. So I was living in Brooklyn. So it'd take me like an hour train ride to get into Manhattan. And sometimes I'd have like an audition at 8 and nothing else until that afternoon. And it made no sense necessarily to go all the way back home. So I would just go to whatever theater was nearby, and anything that like matched that gap, I would just go see. And it was either I saw a great movie I wouldn't have seen, or it was somewhere to take a nap, you know? Yeah. And I saw one of the greatest it was right before anybody knew what the hell parkour was. And it's a French action movie called District B13, I think is the name of it. And fascinating. One of the greatest parkour chase scenes you'll ever see in your life. But it was that same way. I was so glad I watched it. It was in French with the subtitles. And then later on, maybe I found it on Netflix or something like that, and they dubbed it. And when I watched the dub, I was like, oh, this isn't as good because you didn't get the inflection of the original actor's performance. I'd much rather read that.
Very cool. Tell us a little bit more about your workshops, because I do want to get back to the audience part of it. Like, what are the things that you specifically help with when someone reaches out to you? What's the most common thing or need that they have?
Yeah, like I'll use the people that we're working with right now. You know, they do a lot of sales presentations, or we go in and we really sat down. I was like, so who are your audience? And what we found out with them is they kind of had a 3-pronged approach. So kind of going back to Ed saying, hey, I had different websites for different things. And so it was like, okay, this is how they reach out for partnerships with people in real estate to like let real estate agents, or they go into title companies and do presentations. So that way real estate agents are helping people sell their property. Oh, they know that this mineral rights thing is an option. So we would write one talk for that group and another talk for people that I think they had like lawyers they would partner with. And then so what we would do is come into their company, and we're starting with the guy that basically reaches out to real estate people. We're going to build that talk. And what we found is a lot of times you're fishing in different ponds, right? It's still the same strategy. And so what we do is when we go in, either a company brings us in or we have people come into our workshops, is that middle section, what I call the content section, where you're teaching about your solution. That's always going to be the same. Right. And you come across, we did the same thing for Sunrocks people, when all these people, like the solution was still to invest in their multifamily real estate thing. But what you would start with was always unique. And so it's really getting that clarity when we come into a company and saying, okay, give us a list of all, or, give us an idea of like who your 5 best customers or what types of people are. And let's create a personal story and a narrative that talks to those people. Then we're going to bring them in, and the content's going to be the same. And usually the call to action is the same as well. And the other thing we find going into companies is they have too many calls to action. It's like, and it's like, because I'll ask, because once we map the entire WellCrafted story out, then we give them strategies on, okay, if you're going to a title company to give a talk, this is how you do this in 45 minutes. But if you're asking me on a podcast or something like this is how you take those same elements and you lead with this story, and here's your content. Let's same call to action. And that's what this group was actually, they were doing okay in sales trainings. They wanted to get on more media. They wanted to get on more podcasts. And I was like, yeah, there's probably not a lot of people looking for, I need a mineral rights guy on my podcast. So we started going down like, okay, what podcast or what stages would your ideal audience be watching? And so we found investment podcasts or real estate ones or things that lawyers would dive into. And so that's once we map it out, then it's the strategy. Okay, here's the keynote version. Here's how you would do this even one-on-one with a prospect, or here's how you do it on a podcast. And usually once we come in, they're having some success. So we want to amplify their closing rate or amplify what they're already doing well. But then we usually come in and think, have you thought of these other stages? Because I always think the fastest way to build your business is to leverage other people's audience. I mean, that's why people go on podcasts. It's why, like you said, you want to be on somebody else's stage where they already trust the person that hosts that podcast or does that event. And then they're going to edify you, and you have an opportunity to be an authority to an audience you never would have been able to have access to.
Now, when they speak in these places and they're speaking separately, how do they get them to connect with them? Are they giving them their main website, or are they giving them a landing page that has it broken out just for what you talked about? Because that's one of the things that you can do instead of back to the same website, is make landing pages for each one of these.
Yeah, and it varies, but that's what I recommend, that they have a landing page on, specifically if they're doing some kind of free gift, or we have a lot of clients that the call to action is to jump on a call. And so it literally it's the landing page with their Calendly link or whatever that is. Because as you know, if they go to this website, there's all these options. They're going to go down this rabbit hole. They're either going to get discouraged, or they're going to tell themselves some story on why, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, or this person can't help after all. Where if they just hit a landing page and the only thing they see is exactly what you talked about, they're going to take action there as well.
You can always drop down below, Brian. You don't have to like shut your camera off.
Yeah. I was just trying to do it quickly. I had to pop my ears. I didn't know everybody
going underwater. But that back to your statement about what makes, and if you're going to do these things, have a calendar on there so they can, I don't know if you probably said this, but so they can book it. Don't have them apply with the information, or have them do that, but then take them to another page where they can schedule an appointment, so that you don't have to have another person follow up with all these people. You have these things set up originally. That is one of the things that I see is happening on a lot of the go high level websites and other stuff, is when they sign up, but then there's not the next step where they can get to the calendar and make an actual appointment. Now you're booking appointments, and you have these appointments booked, and it's one less step that somebody has to go through and call these people. And I think
I even like to do it where, if let's say you're going to do some free gift or some PDF or an ebook or a video series or whatever, I always tell them, you get this bonus when you book a call, right? And then they go to the website. The other thing, and it seems silly, but it really converts really well, is we'll go in and change what people call their call or their free gift. Like, as opposed to a discovery call or a second opinion call or something, we go in and create what we call like a results-based title. So it's literally, what are you getting? It's like your financial freedom call, your piece about your investment call, like, and it seems kind of cheesy, but that stuff converts so much more than just generic book a call. If they're like, what do I get at the end of this call? Right. Like you're going to get, for us, it's like your personalized well-crafted story call. Because even on the call, we're going to map out what your story is. And then it's up to you if you want to, because I'm like, cool, there's all your elements. You have that. And if you want this to be effective, you should probably bring us into your company, or you should come to a workshop or whatever. And that's the other thing. If you have multiple offers, the great thing once you get them on the call is, pretty quick in that conversation, is this my high ticket guy? Is this my mid ticket person? Is this just somebody that needs a course on their own? So again, you're not confusing your audience saying, well, I have this, this, or this. It's all going to one spot. And you could even do that to your account. They could fill out that form or they could fill out, like, book a call. And that email that goes to them is, cool, before we jump on the call, I need you to watch this video, and here's 5 questions. We need you to answer. That way we can maximize your time. And it's not a 2-step process. It's just the autoresponder.
I totally agree. And then, like, because I when I was recreating my own websites, separating them out, I noticed that my buttons were like, contact us. And I'm like, and there was 3 of them. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I utilized my assistant and had him come up with direct response statements for each one, to where it was different. Right. If you didn't get to the first one, which was not, hey, that didn't hit me, but the second one might hit me exactly where I'm at after I read what I just read. And the third one definitely would got me. You know what I mean? So you have different levels of trying to get there, and you can work these things out with your assistant, ChatGPT, direct response, tell it what you're looking for. And that it's amazing to totally do this stuff differently than what we're used to, or having other people do it for you. You know exactly what you want to say. So utilize that.
Yeah. And I think you should have a different landing page for each of those offers too, because, and the other thing, one of the techniques we teach in that talk is you embed what you want your audience to do. So let's say you do have 4 different products. Well, you got to decide that day, okay, this audience is all these people I'm going to talk about the online course. So don't ever bring up the fact that you also have a workshop and you also have this. And what we do in the content piece, it's little tinier stories. That's usually where we're talking about a client. So we'll bring up a problem, be like, such and such problem. Lucy came to our workshop and she had that problem. And then I go teach, but I've embedded, they have a workshop, right? And that way, too many people wait till the end of the presentation to talk about their offer. And if you embed that in a testimony, and it's just a little bit, go back to teaching whatever it is, but if you'll embed that, the brain will do this thing. It's called the second conversation, because they'll go like, oh, they have a workshop. I wonder how much it costs. I wonder where it is. Blah, blah. They'll start asking themselves all these questions. So by the time you get to the bottom and there is the call to action, they're expecting it or almost want you to do it. But you can do the same thing with a free call. You know, Sally took advantage of our free, you know, blah, blah, blah call. And then you go back and teach, because then they're like, oh, right, they brought that up. And then it's not the first time they're hearing about you wanting them to take the next step.
So you don't just keep saying, if all you got after this was, that one I always get. Or by the time we're done today, by the time we're, you know, people want.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The old school way of doing it.
Are we done for today?
It sounds like you're done.
We've been doing this for 45 minutes.
I think we're good for today.
We try to keep it at 30. We gave him 15 extra minutes.
I know.
Thanks, guys.
Because we're snowed in here, Ed. We
don't know what to do. Watching snow fall in Texas, which is rare. So, you know,
we shut down because of a light dusting. We've got a whole inch so far.
We do.
Yeah, but today is a national holiday now.
Is it?
A federal holiday? Yes. The morning of Carter.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. So I was like, "What? No mail? No. What the heck?"
Didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. No, they decided to make it for the second worst president to have it.
And we almost made it through a whole episode without being political. But
there we go.
So Ed's on here, so we're always going to be political.
I always appreciate you guys letting me pop on and talk shop. So it's always good to chit chat with you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we want to get the word out about branding and how to be the authority in your industry. All the stuff we talk about is very important stuff. And we want to make sure that people, if we're connected in other markets, in other sandboxes and other stuff.
100%.
All
right, Ed, take us out.
All right, Brian, Jimmy, thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for being here and listening to us today. We really appreciate you. We do this because of you. We do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. What's that?
Central.
That's right. And that would be, and we won't care about 1 p.m. Eastern. We're here each week. And if you want to be on our show, reach out to us. If you have questions, reach out to us. And again, thank you both for being here. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.